JJ the CPA here. Hope you're doing well. Hey, wanted to share some great news that the Senate has passed the PPP Flexibility Act, HR 7010. Now, I did go through some details related to that. They've basically taken the House bill and have passed it. It's now going to be heading to the president to sign. So if you'll check out this video, I put a link to it in the body of this, and in this video that I just released yesterday, as you can see, I am walking through a lot of the finite details of the PPP Flexibility Act, but I did want to highlight a couple of things to you to go a little deeper than what I gave in my update yesterday. And if you would, go on a little journey with me, because I'm going to really show you in black and white really what this act is all about, okay? And really make sure you're understanding what this act really means to you and what it really means to the CARES Act. So as I had covered in the video, but it is going to be a covered period of 24 weeks, not the 8 weeks. That's almost basically 6 months. Okay, if you really add it up. Now, the one thing to note on this is that the covered period is that long, and I was hoping maybe the Senate would come in and do some different clarifications, but the thing to note is that the maximum amount for the self-employed individual that will be able to be included for the payroll costs will still be line 31 of the 2019 Schedule C divided by 52 times 8. I was hoping that that would ultimately be by 24. However, maybe the SBA will come out and do an updated interim final rule that will allow for that. But what I'm telling you right now is that in the PPP the PPP Flexibility Act, it does not change the amount that can be included for the self-employed or for the officer or owner, I should say. So again, SBA may come out and give us more guidelines on that. That'd be great if they did. But what I'm telling you is the SBA guidelines, what we know now is that it's still 8 weeks worth of owner-employee compensation, as well as the self-employed being line 31 divided by 52 times 8. What this would deal with, though, is the covered period being 24 weeks would be for the employees that are not owners and for, obviously, those that are not self-employed. The 24 weeks would cover the utilities, the rent, the interest, along with those payroll costs for the employees. It would include the health insurance costs as well as the retirement match. But know this, when you're going through the application, there is a very distinct line in the forgiveness application where the calculation of how much the owner payroll or owner employee or self-employed, all those different terminologies, is to be included, and it is still the same because we weren't part of a quote-unquote covered period in the same way that employees were. When I say I, meaning me as an employee owner. So here's all you need to know. On the 24 weeks, it applies to everything you would think, except as of now, it does not change the amount of compensation payroll cost for the employee owner. Also, to replace and rehire and related to the salary reductions. Okay, so this addresses the fact that the rehires had to be in play by June 30 and any salary reductions had to be eliminated by June 30. So the Flexibility Act has indicated that you now have until December 31st, 2020 to do any rehire if you need to eliminate any salary reductions. So it does give you more time to do that. Now, the one thing to note is that in the PPP Flexibility Act, it does allow for the FTE reduction calculation to be ignored if the borrower can show in good faith that they had an inability to hire an eligible and similarly qualified employee, or they had an inability to get their business back to where it was before February 15th due to that business having to comply with COVID restrictions. So let's be clear on that. It's only giving a safe harbor, for lack of a better word, on FTE reductions. That is the full-time equivalent employees, right? So the salary reductions, okay, there is no safe harbor on that. You would still need to cure any salary reductions, and that is determined employee by employee. So I've got a couple of videos that talk about this issue with FTE, as well as this payroll calculation. So those things are still going to be in place. So you do have more time to include payroll and the related payroll costs. You do have more time to get rid of any salary reductions, which is, it is analyzed employee by employee. But while you still have more time to regain your head count, your FTEs, there is a safe harbor related to that. Then we have a situation where we have this language that is now in the PPP Flexibility Act. And what's interesting here is that this language was not in the CARES Act. Okay, it was the SBA that came out on April 3rd and indicated, and then it came out with an interim final rule, but it indicated it was the SBA that said at least 75% had to be used for payroll and no more than 25% could be used on non-payroll costs. So Congress didn't say that. The SBA did. The SBA interpreted it. The SBA put that requirement. So may not have realized that, right? May have thought that came out of the CARES Act. Well, it didn't. So what the Flexibility Act did here is put it into law. And what it put into law was that there is a 60% requirement. In fact, what it reads is the borrower shall use at least 60% on payroll costs and may use up to 40% on non-payroll costs. So I've got another video, and you're going to have a link to it at the end of this video. I'm also putting a link to it in the body of this video, but I would like for you to check out that video because I'm going to go in length to talk about, well, what is this 60% cliff? That's what people have coined this, is that there has been a 60% cliff now requirement put into the law to achieve forgiveness. So check out that video. But I do want to take a minute now and want to really walk you through what this act really is. I'm just going to give you a couple of examples here. So here is I'm going to scoot over here. We can pull up. Here's a full page of Section 3, page 3 of the PPP Flexibility Act. Okay? So this is the meat. This is where it starts. But when you're looking at this act, what I want you to note or know is that this act on its face, if you were only to look at this act, you wouldn't know what to do. Okay? Meaning this is not a separate standing act. All this act does is replace language and add language to the existing CARES Act. This is not a separate act. Many times when you have an act, it's creating all new provisions, but when you're looking at a new act, a lot of the times you'd be able to read that act and know exactly what needs to get done, A to Z, because in that document, in that act, you would know everything that you would need to know about that act. Of course, I'm simplifying that a little bit, but what I'm telling you is that's normally how it's done. Okay, this act is nothing more, I'm just repeating myself, than a replacement of language in the CARES Act and adding some paragraphs to the CARES Act. So it's not a standalone act. So that's why I want you to check out that video where I'm going to do a little more analysis into the concern of this 60% cliff that's been created. But just an example of what I'm then actually telling you is that here is the part of the Flexibility Act, and it's addressing the forgiveness section. That's 1106. That's the section in the CARES Act. And you can see here that it is indicating that it's going to strike and insert. Okay, what is it striking? Well, it used to say 8 weeks when you look here. Okay, that's what it used to say. So it's saying it's going to strike the paragraph 3, and it's going to insert this new paragraph 3 that indicates the 24 weeks with a little bit of additional language there on the earlier of 24 weeks or 12/31/20. So here's one other example, and it's a pretty popular one, right? So in 1106 subsection D, paragraph 5B in the CARES Act, it currently or originally has June 30. So what the Flexibility Act is simply striking June 30 and inserting December 31st. So it used to say this, okay, it was the June 30 date was in 2 parts of 5B. And so what it's indicating is that now in 5B, those dates will be 12/31/2020. So see, this is just a replacement, okay? Now, we also see that new paragraphs have been added, number 7 and number 8. Number 7, this all falls under the forgiveness. Everything here falls under the forgiveness changes, insertion, striking, inserting into the CARES Act of 1106. But paragraph 7 that's being added is the FTE safe harbor provision, where if somebody can show in good faith that they weren't able to hire eligible or similarly qualified employees, or they couldn't go back to the same level of business due to COVID restrictions, that the FTE safe harbor comes into play. And then paragraph 8 that is added, and it's an adding of language that was not in the original CARES Act, and this is that so-called 60% cliff that has put into play. But again, I want you to watch this video because I'm going to show you how it compares to what we had been dealing with the original PPP forgiveness application, because it was the SBA that put that requirement into play. It wasn't in the law. Paragraph 8 now puts it in the law. But again, the way it reads is shall use at least 60% for payroll to get loan forgiveness, and then may use up to 40% for non-payroll. So I want you to review that video because I'm not concerned about it. Many of you are. I'm going to show you why you shouldn't be concerned about it. And in my opinion, I don't think it's really created anything new, even though when you read that, you're like, what are you talking about? That looks new. That can be construed as if you don't use 60%, you're not going to achieve loan forgiveness. Well, does that mean all? Does it mean nothing? All right. Hey, thanks for tuning in. I'd love it if you'd subscribe to my YouTube channel. And then I've got a ton of other playlists, for those of you that are self-employed and you have questions about the PPP application, the forgiveness. If you're still looking to apply for PPP, you're still looking to get information as an employer for PPP forgiveness, I've got playlists that are in the body. I also created a community service website, just put it together to help. Nothing on there requires you to give me your information, but you'll see at jjthecpahelp.com, that is not my business website, meaning I just put it together as a community service. You're going to find documents and SBA guidelines. You're going to find worksheets that I've put together, also related to tax credits, survival guide, additional information related to a whole host of information for you. All right. Hey, again, thank you for tuning in. If you made it till here, if you're not a subscriber, please take a minute and go ahead and subscribe. Check out my other videos, and then get ready, because here comes your opportunity to see the video to check out this 60% cliff. Go check it out. Thank you so much. JJ the CPA out.